So what I really, when I talk about whole person development, it's taking that all that we know about that experience and then building scaffolding is what I describe it around that experience so that people could be more intentional. I think I mentioned to you I was speaking at this kind of this cool conference this week, and I asked people in the room. I said there's about 200 people in the room, and I said how many of you got any preparation whatsoever, or got no preparation whatsoever for your first leadership role? And I bet 90% of the people in the room raise their hand.
Hands go up.
No one gets any preparation for what it's going to be like to stand there out in front first. And so when I talk about whole, I think this is one really basic example I'll finish with too, is just this conversation between the things that we can see and the things that we can't. So for example, budgets and mission statements and goals and quotas and all these things, systems we put in place that we can see are in constant communication with the things that we can't. And the things that we can't are things like our motivations, you know what I mean? Our passions, our the things that are getting us down. It's this basic psychology. I think this is where my training as a psychologist, right, comes directly in line, or not in line with, but sort of face to face with the reality of the things that we can. And they're impacting each other all the time. So this isn't the soft stuff. I describe psychology not as the soft science, but the harder science. You know what I mean? Because it's things that we're trying to understand that we can't see. So I hope that helps.
Oh, totally. All right. So I definitely want to make sure we talk about your book before we move into it. And this may pivot into that, actually. So my listeners here, many of them are in leadership roles. I'm certain none of them got proper training for those roles. So what are some things that they can be thinking about or equipping themselves with that will support them better as leaders?
Yeah. So this is also a shameless plug for the product I developed, but you mentioned the WILD toolkit.
Yeah.
And by the way, WILD, the acronym stands for Whole and Intentional Leader Development. So it is my one good kind of statement about what we do. And what I was focused on is I think I didn't realize this when I started this about 10 years ago, but I wanted to, instead of going around and speaking about what this would look like, I don't want to just to inspire people. I wanted to leave them with a scaffolding and a process for doing that. So I ended up creating this set of assessments, and we call them whole leader. It's a whole leader process or system where it's 10 different developmental moments. And I say that because it's when you say, like, how do we go about doing this? I think it takes intention. And that's something that's difficult for people, because the first thing that we bail on is our own development. And then the moment comes and we wish we had done a little bit of that preparation for whatever that moment is. I would say one thing that I've learned regarding the use of the toolkit, and this is probably some of my most forward thinking that other people are doing as well, is that so much of our learning and growth is about the way that we invite people into their own development. That actually you can build efficacy, which is psychologically speaking is a huge component of all kinds of other outcomes that we want. But you can actually build efficacy even in they call it developmental efficacy, even in people who are resistant. So it's so interesting because so often I get called in because we've got some troubled executive, right? We got some person that the CEO can't make sense out of this one VP who's causing trouble for everybody. But what's fascinating is if you invite people into their own development, that it actually begins to shift their mindset. It reminds me of all the Carol Dweck work around growth mindset. And it's really fascinating how that, let me give you one example, is like I had a leader say, who's going to get in front of 1,000 people in this organization and say, what all of you should be doing is developing your people. And I said, can I edit you right now? Instead of saying what you should be doing, because no one wants to be should have into anything. I said, what if you ask them, what would change if you were making a better investment in the people on your short list? And it's like now everybody's development, they're like, oh, I could do that, as opposed to I should do that. And so it's just, I'm excited about the way that the conversation is shifting and the work we're able to do. And I realize that's what I think the toolkit is doing. And I hope for folks that are out there that might be inspiring to them to maybe kind of change the way that they ask questions today.
Yeah, so it can be the way they ask questions, but also I'm hearing this too. Recognize that you need to be caring for yourself and being intentional about developing yourself.
Yeah.
And equipping yourself. And your toolkit is one of those great tools out there that can help people do that. and help build that scaffolding around them so they are supported. Because when you were talking about that leader, that role, that leader getting out in front, whether it was your dad as a college university president, which, by the way, I've often heard and seen in my own experience, college university presidents, principals of public high schools, and like religious leaders or like pastors of large churches, like those are the three most toughest jobs you can get, because you don't have a lot of authority over really anybody, and you're being watched, and people feel very passionate and deeply committed to those institutions. Hard jobs. And so when you're out there, you're alone. And there's a lot of fear when you're in that role, when you go first. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty. And, trying to figure all that out, you need that support system.